I think it's really good that the first panel is on the topic of piracy and I suppose the DRM deathmatch. Let's get that out of the way. I think what we'll do is we start just get a general perspective from each panelist on where their stance is, so we can establish sort of who's for and against. We've got quite a mix here of people, from the conservative to the anarchist. So maybe if we just head down the panel, and maybe if you give I would introduce yourself, who you are, some context, so people know why you have the opinions that you have, and a small statement of your first feelings on any of those topics without a big dive in monologue as well. I'll stop you. Go first.
Okay. I'm Malcolm Seekers. I'm the digital publisher at Macmillan. So we publish academic books, schools and colleges. That's what we focus on. I think DRM is an absolute pain. It's expensive and difficult to implement. At this point, though, I'm struggling to see whether we've got an alternative that will work with our current models and with the market that we're dealing with in academic.
Arthur Atwell with Paperwrite and Electric Bookworks. And as many of you know, I usually argue against DRM, and it's not because I think DRM isn't occasionally necessary. Malcolm gave a great defense of it in his talk last year at the Footnote Summit. But I just think it shouldn't be the default, it shouldn't be the starting place, because it's a very expensive way to put a technical restriction on something that can be so easily subverted. But I look forward to complicating that in the discussion.
I'm Nico Farson, a freelance publisher, and I'm chair of the PAS Publishers Association Legal Affairs Committee, perhaps why I'm sitting here. Okay, DRM, I'm totally in favour of it. I think what will be important here is our definitions. What do we mean by DRM? I can't see that one can ever put something out into the marketplace, it's your property, without saying how it can be used, and that's the way I understand DRM. Within DRM, there are various ways of managing that and organizing that. So I think we need to be very specific and clear about our definitions here. My own position is, I think phrased in a question, who pays for culture in the 21st century? And I think that is a question which we can discuss with great fruitfulness.
My name is Peter Brouwer from Future Managers. We published the first educational app in 2012. Our view is also that we see DRM as essential. Until there's something better to replace it, there's certainly still the way to go.
Good morning, I'm Michael Balsker, digital publisher at Profile Books in London. I always feel very confused about DRM, and in the end I think it's probably just a distraction, and the more time that we spend worrying about DRM and piracy, the less time we focus on publishing great books and publishing them well. But then I think there's a lot of other complications there, and I'd also separate open access from piracy and DRM. Open access is a completely different thing and exists within the wider framework of copyright, so I think that's important.
Okay, thanks. Maybe let's start with that separation. So let's tackle piracy and DRM first, and maybe when we're halfway through, open up back on the open access. I mean, going through the discussions of DRM, everyone touched on DRM and then sort of included piracy. Perhaps, give the opinions of both yourself and perhaps what confusion there is in the market based on the question, is DRM there to prevent piracy and what does it do for piracy? Is that the be-all and end-all of DRM?
Now, I think in preparation for this conference, I googled DRM, and lo and behold, the second line was a video clip on how to crack DRM. So you would expect, maybe that for free, but it will cost you $30 to buy the software so that you can crack the DRM. So I figured, well, that's around about 3 ebooks, and you'll break even. But you buy something to make it illegal or to copy somebody else's work.
I wonder if they got copy protection on the software. No, they're interesting.
Probably. So in short, you need to communicate to your reader or to whoever that it is copyrighted. Another analogy is obviously, why do we lock our cars? Your car windscreen can be knocked out. So you still need to communicate that this car is locked, you shouldn't enter it, and in some way or another, with DRM, it's at least communicating to the user that, listen, you should buy this. It's not for free. If you want to make it for free, yes, there's a lot of merit in it to also make some of your material for free and entice a learner, a reader, to buy maybe your book. So that's a strategy, but in principle, I think one should communicate your intellectual property to a potential reader.
Yes, I want to emphasize this point. It was not the DRM that was cracked, it was the technological protection measures that were cracked. DRM goes much wider than that. If I decide to give away a book for free, that's still DRM. It's still the way in which I manage the rights. So I think we should be quite clear about definitions. I want to add this one point and emphasize what Michael has said. Let's forget about piracy. It's actually a pity that it is in the topic, because piracy should be the least of our worries. Our issue is, how do we ensure that people who create are compensated fairly, and that the users are receiving what they expect from the product they're buying. In the end, it's the old issue of balance between the rights holders and the rights users. When we talk about DRM, it's nothing else but old issues of copyright that we are looking at. How do we protect and how do we allow and assist users to get the best out of the product they buy?
There's also the complication with digital where people with digital, they're almost used to a PDF document, so you can print it and you can copy it to someone else. So that's kind of the idea that they come in with when they start looking at ebooks, which is a bit of a problem, because coming back to copyright and compensating authors fairly, that becomes a problem, because they're expecting, like the physical book, it will sell one copy to a person. And last year at the footnote, I gave the example of a college that, it had to go into Word document because it was for blind children, and how they wanted a quote on 5, and we agreed on it, but then they only ordered one, for the 5 children. Now you can't do anything about it. And recently I had a school that phoned us. They were having big issues with Adobe Digital Editions downloading the book, and they cannot get it downloaded. And after a bit of asking and finding out what happened, I realized that what they had done was they created an account and put that on 5 different teachers' computers, and on the 5th computer it wouldn't download. Now, what's the problem? But we would sell 5 different books to those teachers. So there's there is a bit of a misconception when they come to ebooks, and that is a bit of a problem if there is no kind of protection on their physical measures.
One of the problems with DRM is simply that it's really expensive just to figure out. And we pay for it as publishers, we pay for it all the time, even if we're not using DRM, because it's now built into distribution systems. So for instance, if you distribute on Amazon, you're actually, in a sense, paying for DRM, because you're paying for the Amazon ecosystem that publishers have enabled because they've asked for a DRM ecosystem. So what we're desperate to figure out here is the kind of principle or the rule for our industry as to how we should manage these things. But in actual fact, every single book warrants a moment of thought, or perhaps a discussion about whether, for this particular product, we need to spend money on DRM because of the particular nature of the customer. And so our job really is to learn as many ways as possible that we can, as Nicole says, explain to consumers what their rights and obligations are with this particular book, either explicitly or implicitly. Personally, I don't think we can expect much of consumers. I don't think we should expect them to understand copyright law, but I think we should expect them to to just be able to use our product without even thinking about it. And the problem with the DRM schemes we're stuck with at the moment is we certainly don't make it easy for consumers, particularly if they happen to use it in the context of products and can't move between their apps.
So I guess with DRM, I started out as a student, like many people, in those halcyon days of the internet, just freely downloading any kind of material, just because everyone did, and just because you're 18 and you don't really know anything, and you just think, wow, this is pretty cool. I've got all this music on my computer. Everyone did it, and then that behaviour then forms your kind of ideology. So you think, wow, this should just be normal. This is brilliant. And then, you get into the real world, and I started to realise, actually, hold on, the entire cultural economy is dependent, as you say, on people getting paid. And I completely flipped my view, as I think most people do, when they realise it is actually a form of theft, and it could undermine the whole value chain of the things that we really want. And then, at the time, I was working at Macmillan in the UK, Pan Macmillan, and I wrote a blog post that said, DRM is not evil. And that was in the time when Cory Doctorow and people were saying it was. Suddenly, it caused this absolute firestorm. We had Cory Doctorow come onto the site and was just leaving lots of comments. Clay Shirky, overnight there were about 100 comments left on this thing. How dare a publisher say that DRM is not evil? Of course it's evil. It's a capitalist conspiracy to cheat everyone. And then, so I'd come round, and then I started to think, actually, well, DRM isn't evil. But DRM is a pain in the arse, and it doesn't help anyone. And that's sort of been my view. But recently, it's started to change, and I think there's one thing that now has really pushed me away from DRM, and that's this. Certainly in the UK, we are almost pathetically and terrifyingly dependent on Amazon for a lot of our business. And that is obviously the thing that scares publishers to a greater degree than anything else. So what that means is that strategic priority number one for publishers is to open new sales channels. And that in practice means direct sales channels from your website and so on. And I'll talk more about that later. The critical thing though is if you can't do that with Adobe. It's too unwieldy, it's too clunky, it's never going to work. If you want to be selling your own ebooks, you have to recognise that you have to get rid of DRM. There's just no other way, because it won't work. So what we're doing at Profile is we're now investing in a social DRM system. So what that means is that every time somebody will buy an ebook from us, it'll be watermarked with their email. They are then free to share that ebook, they can send it to whoever they want, but it will have their email in. And we just think that's fine. We don't call it DRM, we just call it personalised ebooks. And what's more, we use these to send ebooks to corporate clients, to journalists, to authors, all personalised. It won't necessarily stop piracy, but it will act as a bit of a barrier. And we think this kind of social DRM is the only way that we'll ever be able to build our own business, because with the current nature of DRM, it would be impossible.
I think, Arthur, I have to give you an opportunity to comment on that. Perhaps, your insights on, social DRM as I think, a completely different form of protection for the market, and what results, the good and the bad from both the market side and publishers.
Yeah, we at Paperite, the model we have for that business is that we allow print shops, whether photocopy shops or printing businesses, to create paper copies of books on demand. So we provide a digital library that the print shop uses to pay a license fee, download the book and print it for their customer on demand. So for instance, a copy shop around the corner from here, Jetline Sabot Square, you can go over there and get several hundred Random House Drake latest releases, including Lauren Becker's Shining Girls, which has come out today, printed on demand for you. But the big challenge there was, why are we putting PDFs in copy shops? And obviously publishers were concerned. So what we do is we watermark every single page with the details of the transaction, the customer's name, wherever possible, their phone number where they provided, the outlet's name that actually printed that document, the publisher, the date of the transaction, and a unique URL that identifies that particular PDF we delivered. And what we were really surprised at is that publishers were very happy with that, because publishers over the last few years have become comfortable with the idea that you can't stop people photocopying books. Even if we put a bound printed book in a bookstore, someone can easily make a photocopy, and it's exactly the same way as if we print a book out in a print shop. But suddenly, if we're socially DRMing, I suppose, is these books, watermarking these books with those details, it really makes a big difference. We had an unexpected happy surprise when a school who bought several hundred books from Paperite for their students realized that it meant that every school child's textbook had their own name on it. It was like name tagging every textbook. And suddenly they weren't worried about kids stealing each other's textbooks, which was a nice happy surprise from that particular model. So far, it's working pretty well. Naturally, there are some publishers that still have other anxieties around that model. But we realized pretty quickly that there was no technical way to stop someone making a photocopy. And therefore, it was not a battle we were willing to spend money trying to fight.
Thanks.
I just want to add that, I mean, obviously we add with app is our main stream of publishing ebooks, and in itself, from a DRM perspective, it does give a lot of protection to your content. But as an educational publisher, by adding value to your textbook, it also creates a different impression from your user. I certainly believe that an ebook should not be a PDF behind glass. You should add to it. It opens a whole new world, especially for children and for students, because they come from an era where they are exposed to social media, to all sorts of other ways of learning, and it's not just reading. And in that way, by adding value, you probably take the shift away from the need that you want to copy or to crack it.
Thanks. Interested to get some opinions on the impact of DRM in perhaps South Africa and the emerging markets on the accessibility of books. And not just around, position it as, DRM is evil or not, but really the challenges. I mean, even if DRM is there's a necessity, there's an education in the markets and consumers, so that they know, how do they unlock these books? How do they use them? There's like an operational impact. And, what do you think this has done to impact the accessibility of the markets, socially, economically, and, how does this perhaps drive open access as a gateway to that topic?
Sorry, I just want to pick up on two words which Wesley used, socially and economically. I want to add culturally. I think there are three perspectives from which one should look at this whole issue. But accessibility, I think what Malcolm said is quite important. In our, with physical books, you can't always predict how it's going to be used. So if a person oversteps the barrier in terms of legal copyright photocopying, you sort of look back and you say, well, the book was produced into an open market and this person used it in such and such a way, I couldn't have predicted that. With e-publishing, it's quite different because you have to try to predict, how exactly this title will be used. And your DRM will then have to provide beforehand for the kinds of different uses, the number of downloads, a number of people that will be using it within a school or college. So it changed it dramatically for publishers. And I think it's perhaps there where publishers, sadly, in many instances, are perhaps too slow in thinking about the different DRM ways. We've already heard of the spectrum of them, and then designing the business models around those different kinds of DRM that are available. And they are developing very fast as technology develops. Could I draw your attention to a very recent, published in May, April I think, a report by, I just need to get the title, European and International Booksellers Federation. It's on interoperability. In other words, the ability of a title, an e-title, to be used on different platforms. And that seems to me to be a much bigger issue and a much bigger pain in some way than the other issues around DRM. If I buy a product, on how many platforms can I use, how many devices can I use it? That to me seems to be the big thing to crack and for publishers to work on. not piracy, not the difficult issues of DRM, but that one, the buyer who wants total versatility in this product. And perhaps we can talk a bit more about that.
I think that is accessibility.
Yeah. So to get back to the accessibility issue, it is so important for publishers to try to predict how is this product going to be used and what accessible features within the whole range of DRM, including technological measures, should I apply to this one product.
Anyone else? So we've got like another 5 minutes, and then I'd like to open for questions. So by all means, get it off your chest, but
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the point about alternative business models. There is a view that all our discussions about DRM, which for those of us who have been following this for some years, has been the same discussion over and over for about 8 years now, since I came to it, may be a symptom of a much deeper problem which we should be talking about, which is that DRM is patching a business model that that is flawed fundamentally in the world of the internet, where the internet is made of copies. That's what the internet is. It's a grand copy machine. And that we should be more aggressive about finding alternative business models. And a business model is, what is my product and who's giving me money for it and who's going to use it? Those are three different things. And we're still wedded in publishing to the business model that we create a book up front, and then the person who's going to use it pays us for it. In educational publishing, it's a little bit different, because the person who's going to use it and the person who pays for it is different. But we really need to be more innovative with our business models, how the money moves from one business to another. And there are examples. One of the kind of big stories of South African educational publishing right now is what Siyavulo is managing to do, producing open licensed textbooks and building a business around assessment, not around the selling of content. That's a business model experiment. Whether or not it works, experiment is what is really exciting. And that's what DRM should be pointing us to.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And one thing I just think of is why would people be upset with DRM? I mean, if it is because they want to illegally and easily copy the things, then we've got to stop that. We cannot have that. But if there are other things that they want to do that DRM is causing them frustration with, like for example, they want to print out worksheets that are in the book, and now they can't, and they thought they'd be able to do that with a PDF, is to maybe then look at those things and make those things available without DRM so that they can print those. And that would probably make them much happier. So that may be something to look at, is why are you unhappy with DRM? Okay, let's see how we can address that without removing those technical measures completely, so we don't kind of make it easy for them to do piracy.
do you think publishers are engaging with the markets officially to learn the sort of, what are the problems, or is there still more, I mean, from Macmillan I suppose you can speak, but maybe generally, is there still this, let's err on the side of caution?
I think there's both. So, and that is the reason that we're saying that we can't just say remove DRM, because that is just so risky. The directors at publishing houses are not going to do it. They've got many staff that they've got to look after, big companies, and they just cannot make decisions that may impact the future of such a big company. And so maybe something that would be less risky would be to go to the public and find out what are the problems, so we can still keep those measures in place, but make it easier for them to do the things that they want to do that are legal. So I think other publishers are probably doing the same thing as well. We're definitely doing it.
I think it's just worth adding that educational publishing and ebooks coming off a very low base, so there's still a lot of feedback that we will probably get in time from institutions. I think right now the most limiting is not DRM, it's actually devices by itself in the educational sector. Institutions grapple with what should they provide devices to students, laptops, tablets, smartphones, etc. So they're there at the moment and not at DRM at this point in time.
Just coming back on 2 points. First, I think that the interoperability one is extremely important, and that's where I see social DRM as the best answer, because then you just have all of the files, you can send them everywhere. It can mean that people have the flexibility, and also they have the ownership of those. They can do what they want with them, they can read there. And then just coming also back on the point about accessibility and so on, and here I think open access is actually a big question and is also a whole new business model. Open access really at the minute applies to journal publishing above all, and journal publishing is the super profitable part of publishing. When you look at the big journals publishers, they're the ones making extreme profits. I think open access is really shaking things up, because the situation in academic publishing like that is that you have governments pay people to do research, and then you have governments pay libraries to buy that same research. So essentially you have institutions, universities, who pay twice for the same material to be produced and then consumed. And that seems, in our kind of era of austerity budgets and so on, to be a huge vulnerability for those publishers. And that's why I think open access is going to shake things up to a huge extent, and it already is. The question is, can existing publishers adapt their business model? And I think it's certainly possible, but it's just, can they do it? Can they really kind of pivot to a new model very fast?
Any last comments before we go to questions? The last 2 sentences. Great, guys. I think there's a lot to dive in there. I think you've got some real clever people here with a variety of differing opinions on the matters. I'd love to get some questions. Please be brave. Sure. Ben, thanks. Everyone's scared.
Great panel, guys. Thanks. Question, just out of interest sake, in terms of DRM versus anti-piracy measures, I've looked long and hard for an actually cracked Adobe DRM ebook, and I've never found one. I'm just curious if anybody on the panel has actually ever seen an ebook that once had Adobe DRM on it that was cracked.
I don't know, but would you be able to know that it was a cracked file? That would be the question. Because, I mean, there are plenty of examples of EPUBs on the Pirate Bay and so on. Just a quick point that I make on that is we do a lot of exercises on checking piracy. And I'm always shocked by two things. One, how few examples of our books we actually find as pirated copies. And two, we almost never find pirated EPUBs. It's always PDFs. And where these PDFs are coming from, I don't know, because we don't sell PDFs. We send PDFs to literary agents, we send PDFs to printers, and that's about it.
Then you know where it's coming from.
Well, exactly, that's what one wonders. And that's why we'd like to have watermark files. But it's interesting, I don't know that I've ever seen it, but yeah, just random out there in the wild EPUBs are rarer than you might expect, in my experience.
They really are, and among other things, I sell ebooks, and people will write to me to say, well, why should I buy this ebook from you when I can just crack the DRM and send it to all my friends? And I say, please go for it, and let me know when you do. And then I never hear from you.
It's not as easy as people think.
Ben, just so you know, once you remove the DRM, you can't tell the difference. It's exactly the same as a normal EPUB.
Hi, thanks for that. I just want to ask regarding the different business models that you spoke about. I think firstly, whenever you speak to publishers in South Africa, they'll tell you that the market is not big enough. And I think, if you make the book open, or if you make it more accessible, you might, perhaps if you're also writing the kind of material that interests people, you might be able to catch a much, much broader market. If you have that, how else can you get other revenue models to work? Like I think Arthur spoke about that as well. What other ways are there to make money? Because you just need the author and the publisher, whoever, to get paid. Once that's paid, surely the book can just be free, because everything on the internet is already pretty much free.
Yeah, I don't think there are any proven business models. If they were proven, everybody in the room would be doing it. What interests me is where the experiments are. So perhaps the most talked about experiments in ebooks in expanding markets is selling ebooks on platforms like Mixit. So essentially where you're buying with your cell phone airtime. Generally the experiments there have all been about selling parts of a book, so one chapter at a time for instance, for very little money, 20 cents, 50 cents a pop. And so far they've been very interesting experiments, and some have had lots of readers, but nothing's made enough money to actually pay the investment costs on a book yet. So whether the volume will grow there, we're yet to see, but I think it's a really interesting, really exciting experiment. And what's interesting is that more and more people are doing that experiment. So it kind of started with probably Cara Michelle self-publishing, then Cover to Cover coming along, and now there's Bookly, and there's EverEgg, and these experiments are coming along. So that's interesting. Obviously, I'd like to list my model with Paperwrite, where we're using photocopy shops to print books out for people. There is actual money being paid, we're paying actual royalties back to publishers. Again, it's not big enough yet to actually sustain a book publishing enterprise on its own, but I think it's a valuable experience. The models that I think are also exciting are licensing models, particularly in education. So let's say a university wants to prescribe your economics textbook for all their students. What I'd love to see is a publisher saying, cool, well, you've got 200 students, pay us a, I don't know, 200,000 Rand license fee, here's the PDF file, put it on your intranet, and all the students can use it. But again, that's an experiment we're yet to see. I think Macmillan's dabbling in something similar, working with ebook projects they're working on, where is essentially a license fee rather than every copy is sold for a price. Those are just a couple of the business models I think are really interesting experiments. There may be others.
I just would quickly say that we actually already do a business model that works in a different way, and it's very unsexy. It's called contract publishing. And it's essentially where people pay us to publish a book. And actually it ties into what Ben said earlier. What happens is there are all of these big companies, they want to publish books. It makes them look good, it makes them look like thought leaders and all of that kind of thing. And actually they just look at the whole thing. They think, we're a bloody rich company. We could hire a whole bunch of people to publish our stuff. But actually, those people over there, they know how to do it. We all know that making a book is fiddly and difficult and has lots of annoying little elements that actually take a lot of skill. So what happens is they come to us, they'll pay us a big whack of money, we know that we have a guaranteed profit on that book before we even do any work. And then we put copies out into the trade as well, or we sell so many copies back to the company at an agreed price. But that's a business model that is sort of working with the flow. And I don't think any of us would want to have that as the sole core part of our business. But as a supplementary thing, I think it can really work.
Another question, I think there was someone at the back there.
Hi guys, great talk. I just wanted to say, I don't know if you guys saw overnight, but Elon Musk made all of his patents for Tesla open patents. I think it's a sign of things to come. I just wanted to ask you guys, with the way that's going, maybe that the book is actually the seed and the rest of the content is the tree. And in that kind of analogy, if you don't plant the seed, you don't get the tree. The idea that if we make these books open and free, that there are other repercussions from that. One of the things, for example, is Lauren Lucas's rights to the movie, I think, of Shining Girls was bought by Tom Cruise. There are these other kind of infestations and machinations of this book, and maybe we're just, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face if we're just thinking about protecting these books.
Yes, if I'm correct, it was a careful move because I'm not sure, but I think it's the Tesla hybrid models that have an open patent now. So it's also an experiment in a way, but it's very interesting. I think the point which you raised is very important. What subsidiary rights are there in a title? And very often authors are not well informed enough about negotiating with the publisher about these subsidiary rights. How else can we sell the book? In what other ways can it emerge in the market? Just a bit of advertisement, we're having a meeting tomorrow afternoon here at 4 o'clock on contract terms, standard contract terms, where we try also to work between publishers and authors to look at what are the different ways and how are they all managed in different ways. And I still disagree with some of the uses of DRM that I've heard you this morning. It's a broad term. And even the worksheets that are given away for free, that's a way of DRM. So I just wanted to emphasize that once again. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. DRM is not copy protection. I think that's really what's right. maybe if we can find who the next and last person is, after it sounds like you want to add two, one more, who was still not the same person at the back. Where have they ran off to? Last chance. Oh, John, go for it then.
Let's take this one.
Hi, John Wheeler. Before I was lured to the publishing services side, I worked for a huge publisher, Elsevier, and we had more lawyers than sense, and we really went after piracy and DRM and everything imaginable. And as someone here said, we've been having the same conversation for 8 years. I think we've been having the same conversation for 50 years. We found, like you did, most of our pirated material was PDFs. And we found PDFs with author notes. We found PDFs within the proof process. We found PDFs how we could imagine. And what we ended up doing, and I'm not saying this is the right way or not, but we worried about DRM and protecting content based solely on the commercial viability of that product. So if you have a product that you're looking to sell 10 or 15 million copies to everybody, you've got a pretty good market. If you've got a very targeted research paper with maybe only 150 people in the world that would be of interest or be part of your marketplace, well then you better lock that thing down tight to make sure that you get your money back, otherwise you won't be able to do it again in the future. So it kind of fell at Elsevier, and I continue to see it as I work with other publishers, to the commercial viability and exactly what is the break even and how much pain are you willing to assume as far as doing customer service, things of that nature, to keep your content protected based on your value chain. Just what I see. So.
Great, guys. Thanks. We've got 22 seconds. Thanks very much. Obviously, there were some hands up that either your answers were addressed or you check it out. Please grab the panelists, and I think they'll be happy to give you their perspectives on things afterwards. Thanks very much.